All right, for all of you wonderful first-year landscape architecture students who made it, thank you. We're really pumped that we got some of our newest members of our community to join us today, so that was wonderful. So third years, I see you doing, I was about to invite you in. Welcome back. Come on in, grab a seat, and while the third years are doing that, I wanted to quickly thank our partners and our sponsors before I introduce our final speaker. And I find I can't do that with a pen in my hand. So first off, I want to thank our College of Arts and Architecture here at Penn State, who's one of our key sponsors, as well as our home school here, the Stuckman School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture, and the leadership of the Landscape Architecture Department. We've had a few faculty members spearing up the committee that put today together, so I'm grateful to them. Also, the Hamer Center for Community Design, who is lovingly incubating the center in development, and it's going to prove to be a key partner and a necessary one, I'm sure, as long as these efforts are both continuing, so thank you. Also, the Institute for Energy and the Environment here at Penn State, the Sustainability Institute, the Pennsylvania Water Resources and Research Center, they actually are helping to sponsor our video efforts today, so thank you to them. Our new partner center in development, the Human Ecology Center, that is joining us over from the College of Liberal Arts. We're hoping to do some really phenomenal work with them as well. And we're so grateful for some champions we've had. The Huck Life Sciences Institutes really made a big push to help bring our efforts here today to the life sciences community here at Penn State, and this wouldn't be a true integration without their support, as well as the Department of Rural Sociology and other partners in the Human Dimensions of Natural Resource and the Environment dual title program. So thank you to those, and oh gosh, I hope I didn't forget anyone, but everybody who's helped support us to bring today's effort. Both, we've been live streaming today, if you haven't noticed. Hi everyone who we're live streaming to. But finally, our standard bearer from Penn State, no pressure, and a good friend of mine, which is why I felt like it was okay to say no pressure to her. Dr. Wu Hong. She is an assistant professor and the Stuckman Career Development Professorship in Design holder as well. She joined the Department of Landscape Architecture here at Penn State in 2016. She is academically trained in architecture and landscape architecture. Her research passion lies in an important and timely set of topics across different spatial scales. At the regional and watershed scale, Hong applies computer-based models to facilitate natural resource decision-making, especially as it relates to water. Through agent-based landscape change simulation and hydrological modeling, her most recent regional scale research investigated the effectiveness of watershed-scale stormwater best management practices and of alternative urban development patterns for conserving stream ecosystem health in the context of rapid urbanization and climate change. At the site scale, Hong is passionate about exploring innovative design approaches to integrating sustainability into urban landscapes. Her current green stormwater infrastructure research focuses on lessons learned on the design, construction, monitoring, and maintenance of low-impact development practices across different social and environmental contexts. Hong also practices landscape architecture professionally. She has garnered 3 international design awards, including a 2012 ASLA Professional Honor Award. Most recently, Hong was selected as a research fellow in LAF's 2017 Case Study Investigation Program. I am pleased to welcome, please join me in welcoming Dr. Wu Hong.
Testing. Testing. Hear me? Good. Good afternoon. My name is Wu Hong, and my talk is about landscape performance one project at a time. And I feel extremely honored and at the same time very, very intimidated to be sharing the podium here with 8 extremely knowledgeable and renowned experts in this field. So, as you heard Kendall introduce me, my short research experience has been training myself into maybe a half hydrologist by modeling urbanization and its stream flow regime impacts. And perhaps my recent 2 years of experience was trying to train myself into maybe a quarter of a civil engineer trying to understand and extract design lessons from the civil engineering and environmental engineering field in design and implementing stormwater management projects, both for adaptation in China or in the United States. One thing that I haven't achieved is definitely on my list is maybe in the next few years, train myself into maybe 100th or 1/10 of an ecologist so I can be better equipped to do this. But opportunities sometimes open up that changes your trajectory a little bit. And that was the case that happened to me when I was got the opportunity to be selected as the Landscape Architecture Foundation's 2017 Landscape Performance Fellow, Research Fellow. And notice that was just this February, so my experience was 6 months long. And I'm going to tell you a brief story, which is no way as glamoring as what Steve has told, but maybe it offers a good contrast of where we are as a profession who is trying to incorporate research in our agenda. So if, for some of you that are not familiar with Landscape Architecture Foundation's LPS series, it's one of the few, and also the flagship online resources that helps designers, agencies to advocate evaluation of performances of our built landscapes. And from March to August, my team, me and 3 or 4 of my students, we worked with 2 firms, Wank Associates and THPDI based in China, Beijing, China, to evaluate 2 projects, one in Denver, the other 2 in Northeast China. The first one was a mixed development community. The second one is a floodplain park. And the third one is actually a regional recreational trail. And we got out of this experience feeling a little bit complicated, accomplished, but more of that is frustration when we handed in at most B- product. And in some sense, I felt, at least myself, and as well as my students, we never got the closure, which exactly the thing that I want to share is a POE, is a post-occupancy evaluation of the POE that we did for the LAF. Okay? Just before we got into the LAF, I want to share this hilarious post. It was a post, it wasn't based on an extensive kind of survey of what comes out of the data, but I think this makes a point of that's what we really need. Maybe it's not the most needed, but maybe you will agree with me, as a lot of the speakers today have talked about, yeah, we're getting a lot better than before integrating key ecological principles into collaborative implementation of projects, but another 2 parts. The performance assessment, and especially that feedback loop from the performance assessment to inform the key ecological principles, that feedback loop still remains to be improved, right? And so even if, granted that I have 100, maybe 100 ideas to criticize the LAF CSI approach, I have to say the program itself is very well constructed, and the online database that LAF constructed is actually really, in terms of communication, very effective, containing a good structure and concise information that you could get when you get online, at a glance of the information, and from overview to sustainable features, to challenge and solution, to cost comparison, to lessons learned, to all the products, general information, very quickly you got a very good idea of what the project is about. And this online material, if you go through this process, LAF, the program manager, helps us revise it for multiple times. So it's very intensively edited to make sure that it's effectively communicated to all of you. Of course, the core of the program is the landscape performance benefits, right? And it's divided into environmental, social, and economic. And there is a document in methods that you could really download and dig deep into what exactly was the method that was applied to evaluate all those environmental, social, and economic benefits. And this list represents the collective efforts by maybe about a decade's efforts by all the research scholars from CSI, kind of representing the diversity of benefit categories. And if we look at under each category, there are certain, under each benefits, certain categories are pretty well represented. For instance, stormwater management and water conservation. We have more cases with good tools to evaluate those benefits, while other categories, not so much. Water body, groundwater recharge, habitat, air quality. There are a lot of good reasons why certain categories are not very well presented. For instance, social benefits. Good study on recreational, social, and educational value. Not so much on cultural preservation and noise mitigation. Economic benefits, good in operations and maintenance savings, not so much in tax revenue. Now we could go over each of the categories and say, why is that the reason certain categories are really difficult to evaluate, but in the interest of time, maybe let's focus on one. Maybe focusing on just maybe the one that's really closely related to the topic that we have today, habitat. And of all the 107 case studies, I was going to ask you to guess, but I clicked too fast. Not a small percentage, not the smallest percentage, but we have 22% of the case studies mentioned habitat quality has been improved. And these are those 22%. And if you look under first category, casual observations, compiling everything that they could find in the media or the literature about what kind of species they have found, the number of species, type of species. And sometimes just casual observations, saying, okay, red fox or a type of bird have been observed here. So that's our first category. Second category, a little more efforts, saying, okay, let's start some preliminary data collection. Maybe it's just one camera, for instance, by the Lincoln Park Zoo. Maybe it's just 3 days of pitfall traps for the arthropods. Maybe it's 2 days of sending out maybe a 3-people team to surveying the park. But that was about it. The biggest category, in the middle, 8 case studies, relied on citizen science. So Audubon Society, the most frequently mentioned, and residents, volunteers, and sometimes in one case here, they used the iBird app, which you can use on your cell phone, turn on your GPS, recording the species, and even asking the app to help you identify species. And then there's the fourth category. Because of the mandates, the agency mandates, or because of the requirement for permit submittal, garden staff, state park staff, have to collect the data and show the efforts that they have been monitoring the success or failure of their projects. The last category, expert-based, 4 of them mentioned that they have contracted or they have collaborated with university faculty on setting up a more rigorous research plan, a multi-year efforts to monitor if you look at the time, these are all the projects that have a time frame longer than 1 year. And we can see it's up to 30 years. Maybe we take a guess. Take a guess of who would be that project. Well, who was kind of responsible for that longest time, 30-year project in the street beach? It's actually by a single expert who has been monitoring the park for 30 years. And most of the lower categories, 2 days, 3 days of monitoring. So this paints a really different picture than what Steve have shown. And this is actually the reality when we, as landscape architects, are trying to integrate research into our projects. Okay? And it's not to say that there's no good cases within this 108 database. I found one, which is the Olympic Sculpture Park, for good reasons, because it was a highly visible pilot project, and it was set up front to be a demonstration project. So they're really invested to say, let's think about research from the very beginning. Let's pull together a strategic partnership so that we adequately allocate funding for research, for implementation, and for the post-occupancy evaluation. So the whole effort lasted at least 7 years, and the outcome was disseminated in a way that it's both friendly to the citizens and friendly to the academic world. And I consider that as a very good example of how we should aim for our work to be. And then 5 of the project mentioned that they have some pre-construction data, which points to us that this is maybe a never able to overcome a difficulty, right? So some of the projects you just you don't have that pre-construction comparison, a baseline condition that you can compare your evaluation with. Not surprisingly, most of them focused on birds. And a little bit disappointingly, that a majority of them focused on counts of number of species. Only 2 to 3 went beyond number of species to bird counts. So that's the level of specificity that we got in this database. 3 of them focused on other types of species. So by this time, you might be wondering, so which category does your project belong in? So I chose this one to explore how we as landscape architects can try to integrate some habitat monitoring. And this was a floodplain park in northeastern China where we turned an underused floodplain land that was forbidden to be built on into a park, which when we also created some wetland environment, so as we wanted to encourage both habitat use as well as human use. So unfortunately, it has to fall under the second category of preliminary data. Because there was no pre-construction data that we could compare it to, we started by asking, what is that we wanted to achieve with the habitat monitoring? Is it to demonstrate there's no harm by building this park on this underused nursery land, forbidden to be developed beforehand? Or is it more about trying to find out how much this connected open space along this waterfront can help support wildlife? As well as how would my park contribute to that habitat support function, right? So in the end, we expand the scale of the habitat monitoring, saying, well, no, we're not going to focus on just the park. We're going to focus on much larger area of this connected riverfront Greenland. And we sent out a 4-people team. There are doctoral students and postdocs in Department of Biology at the university. And we were only able to do a 2-day surveying. Well, when we record with a GPS device the sightings of different species in these 4 categories: birds, butterflies, dragonflies, as well as native plants. And this is what we come up with. So we had something. We had a list of the species. Among 2 of them, we know that it's threatened or endangered. We know that generally the park turned out to be supporting much less species than its surrounding land, perhaps because of the really heavy use. And we counted 15,000 people using the park per day within that 1 hour after work. So then we have really a lot of questions to ask just based on this data. So is it what we did wrong in the habitat structural design so that it doesn't have as much diversity to support the habitat? Or is it we set up unrealistic goals in terms of how much this park can support habitat just because the heavy use wouldn't allow it? So there's so many questions that we weren't able to answer. And then I was hesitant to put this up in CSI document. We talked to the program manager and saying, this is the only thing we got. Amateur and crappy. Agreed? Yes, it's really amateur. Should we really put this up? Yeah, put this up. It's better than none. And should we settle at better than none? That's the closure that we really want to get. Or it's not a closure, maybe it's a start of something better. Okay. And we mentioned, we probably have 100 complaints to make about the CSI program. If we set aside those things, if we set aside time, we're allowed for 5 months to do 3 projects, really unreasonable. We weren't really given much money to support anything other than research assistants. We didn't have as many research assistants as we wanted to have. If we set aside all those difficulties, I talked to the colleagues of the 2017 fellows, which was the biggest difficulty that you couldn't get over? Expertise. As we know, a lot of the previous speakers said, no single person or no single discipline is able to do everything here, right? For me, it was perhaps habitat quality assessment. For other people, it's probably calculating stormwater. But whichever is this model really adequate? Is this firm and faculty working together, trying to put a puzzle together? Is that really realistic? And I know during the last Ecology and Design, the Shire conference, we talked about how do we establish those forum of collaboration within the education field. Collaborative research, collaborative teaching, more a better institutional support system. But I think it really needs to extend beyond the academic. For me, for a lot of the researchers, for most of the CSI fellows, we need to educate and re-educate ourselves so that we could help establish those strategic partnerships with, for instance, Keith or Steve. And is there a mechanism to do that? If I give a call to Steve, is there a mechanism to make you less likely to say no to collaboration? how can we facilitate that? Either by LAF or by others. Is there a mechanism? And what if we don't go out and say, let's do 2 new next year, 5 months, 2 projects? What if LAF allows us to go back to these cases and refine the studies 1 project at a time, right? Oh, sorry. And what if, as we improve each study, as we get more collaboration, more help from scientists, such as those in the audience, and we disseminate it in a way that is more friendly to our community, to this community. I started one. It's a crappy one again, but we have to have a first draft. Then it's a good draft, right? What if, in a project, I was able to figure out with experts why, what, when, where, and how to monitor, and I diagram it. Unlike Bill, where's Bill? I think diagramming really helps us so that the next team wouldn't start from scratch, right? So from reading the literature, I started to build a diagram and say, maybe next time we do it this way, and I figure out along the way which dots, we ask which key questions, what are the key factors to consider there, and how can I get help along the way? Setting goals, for instance, what are the reference conditions? Identifying the variables to measure. Is it a population? Is it habitat? Do we find surrogate measures? Are we using the measures at the appropriate scales, right? And then establishing triggers, a more tricky step is the trigger something, this benchmark being something being present or absent? Is it a change in population size, or is it changes or dynamics in habitat type? And then when we come down to monitoring study design, there's even more factors or questions to be asked. And then you can see maybe the first 4 steps is where really you cannot be absent. We cannot do it alone. We need your help in building up this framework, right? And what if, now let's get out of the CSI box. What if we have other ideas about how do we encourage more and more sound research by ourselves? What if we learn and practice and educate our students of what design as hypothesis means? We have seen multiple good examples from previous speeches about what design as hypotheses are, which would really facilitate the linkage from your design and implementation and evaluating success, right? What if we teach performance evaluation on a regular basis? That is not a what if anymore. The LAAB is requiring us to integrate that into our curriculum. And I know that is one important item in our department meeting, maybe happening in the next few meetings. What if we more strategically involve citizen scientists? As you can see in the 3rd category, the majority of the case studies was able to have some data because of a long-term involvement of the citizen scientists. And what if we, before we start the monitoring, more carefully design that interface so that the data that we collect with the participation of the citizen scientists more kind of service our design, exploration of design questions. And what if we create more incentives for professionals or academics? We know about the CITES initiative. It's still a pilot program, but if you do monitoring afterwards, you could get extra credit in the 9.1 category, right? You can get a 3-star by going through that monitoring process. That's a good mechanism. What if ASLA set up a new category of performance on an award? It doesn't have to be you have to perform well. Maybe if you generate more lessons by showing that you didn't perform well, showing that you failed at something, but you corrected it, that's also a very good thing to reward, right? What if we have a new publication form? I love what Bill said. That's when I know when we need a journal. What if there is a journal or a special issue dedicated to landscape performance research? What if Penn State being the initiator of that journal? Good questions to ask, right? What if we create more constraints on professionals? Proof of POE? What if private clients or public agencies start to request that your firm that demonstrate you have experience or your project have gone through the POE process, so you know that you have been improving your practices with these lessons or successes. And what if, I hope those ideas can come from the audience so that it will sparkle the conversation we have in our living room. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica. Well, I can't think of a better way to invite our guests to the living room since Dr. Hong already did so. So please, Anne, I feel like we should go back to your questions because you've already started posing some. So let's just leave those up there.